Welcome to The Last Resort, the last place you'd look for legitimate sports opinions. I'm your host, Ben Harris, and I am joined, as usual, by Philly Brandon.
How we doing?
We have an epic episode in store for you guys today. Jared Weiss, Celtics staff writer for The Athletic, will join us to break down Game 1 of the Celtics vs. Heat series and recap pretty much the rest of the series as well. NFL segments include Drew Lock of the Week. How's college going, Brandon? And our top 5 most dominant athletes in movies of all time.
Let's get after it.
All right, Brandon, let's start with Game 7, Nuggets versus the Clippers. Wow, what an epic collapse by the Los Angeles Clippers and Kawhi Leonard.
An epic collapse, but it kind of makes you feel good. I mean, as a Sixers fan, I feel whole again. In the playoffs, that's been just kind of, dirt being kicked in my face, watching the Celtics blast by us. Watching Kawhi have just the awful Game 7 that he did, it makes me feel just a little bit better. It really does. He and PG combined for like an abysmal 20 points in a Game 7?
They were awful yesterday, man. They looked like they forgot how to play basketball. Kawhi, because he's so emotionless, when he's playing bad, it almost seems like he's just not into the game. It's bizarre.
Yeah. And for the same way that when he's good, we think he's so calm. When he's bad, it'll say he doesn't care. And PG, I'm convinced, is just a really good NBA player. But that's where that sentence has to stop anymore.
We got to give credit where credit is due. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray have both been playing out of their mind. I mean, Murray put up a 40-burger in Game 7. Jokic had a triple-double with, I think, 19 rebounds, right?
Yeah.
Something ridiculous.
Beyond the stats, though, can you and I just take a minute? And I want to talk about what happened in the fourth quarter of a Game 7 in the NBA playoffs when this man did a two-handed, no-look, over-the-head pass in stride for an assist. How?
He is such a good passing big man. And you'll hear Jared get into it, but Jared was kind of comparing Jokic to Embiid and the differences and why Jokic right now is the more valuable player. And he has the mindset of a point guard. When he gets the ball and he can pass over anybody. He's so fun to watch. Murray has become this automatic bucket when he turns it on. I mean, right now he's the best point guard in the playoffs. He's better than Kemba. He's better than Goran Dragic. He's better than anyone not named LeBron James or Anthony Davis on the Lakers. It's going to be an interesting series against LA, Brandon. I think that the Nuggets are going to take it to 6 or 7. I still think the Lakers will beat them, but how do you bet against what the Nuggets accomplished? That was 3 games. They were down double digits. 16 points in Game 5, came back and won. 16 points Game 6, came back and won. 12 points in Game 7, came back and won against Kawhi Leonard. Oof, that was an unbelievable just 3-game stretch for them.
It's hard to ever bet against success like that. You're right, especially when you talk battle-tested all the time in the playoffs. I mean, they're the epitome of battle-tested. That being said, they were both against teams who, Kawhi less so, but I mean, the Clippers have been known to do this. This has happened before. LeBron is not known to do this. If they get down like that against him, I don't think they're going to be able to come back. Now, I think they're not going to get down again like that. But if they do, I don't think the King and AD let them back in the game.
The one thing I'm not buying about the Clippers' loss was their excuse. Paul George said it. I think Doc Rivers said it.
Baloney.
We didn't have the chemistry. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that excuse. I don't care what your chemistry was. It's total bullshit. You can't lose in 7 games and say, oh, our chemistry wasn't there. Don't worry. Give us another year. We'll be back. No. Yeah, the Nuggets have played together longer. They seem like the more cohesive unit, but Paul George is a top 10 player in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player in the NBA. Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell were competing against each other to be the 6th man of the year. And Harrell won, and Lou Williams was right there. Landry Shamet and Marcus Morris are not slouches, Brandon. They're good players. Fuck all that chemistry talk. You guys, on paper, had just as good as team as the Nuggets. You gave it up. You lost. Chemistry, schmemistry. You guys stink, LA.
Now, that's a bad excuse, but I'm sure. Have you heard the other one that they offered today? I want to say it was Kawhi. that said this year was never about winning a title right off the jump. We knew we had time. You don't go out and make the moves that they made and get the guys that they got, give up the farm to get PG if it's not about right now. It's always been about right now.
Paul George was the one who said it wasn't championship or bust this season.
Yeah.
Which, how can you buy that? I mean, you don't put together this team. Look, when the Celtics formed, didn't they win a championship in their first year?
Yeah. And if you're talking, and we're speaking of the Celtics team right now that Jared's going to talk about, they're not championship or bust. They're young guys they're building. They went out and got 2 superstars. That's a championship move. There's no way around that.
Miami Heat, correct me if I'm wrong. First year, they went to the championship and lost, but they still got to the championship.
And that was considered a massive failure when they lost. I mean, they wanted the team blown up.
You have the Lakers winning that series against the Nuggets?
Yeah, the sports analyst in me says yes. The kid who really wants to see a movie made about this one day would love to see the Nuggets win it.
Who would play Michael Porter Jr.?
That's
trick question. Nobody in Hollywood can play him. He's far too handsome and far too good at basketball. All right, NFL recap. Here's how it works, Brandon. This is your first NFL recap with The Last Resort. I'm going to list the game. I give the game a name, and we break down the game. Are you ready?
Hit it.
Kansas City 34, Houston Texans 20. I call this the trading DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson did, in fact, make the offense worse game.
Anyone with eyes knew this. I mean, you can't replace what he did in the passing game with a running back who had one, albeit great season, but one, worthwhile season.
Chiefs look like they didn't miss a beat. Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league. There should be no criticism directed at Deshaun Watson. He does what he can on a nightly basis to put them in a position to win. It's not his fault that Bill O'Brien is a horrendous coach, and he really doesn't have any receiving weapons. Will Fuller is his best receiver. Will Fuller is better as a 2 than a 1.
Yeah. And Kansas City, 3 names, Clyde, Edwards, and Hilaire. I mean, they didn't need any more talent, and they got a Swiss Army knife out of the backfield who might be the best receiving back, third down back, triple threat back since Darren Sproles one day.
All right, this next game, Buffalo against the Jets. The Bills won 27-17. This was the Adam Gase isn't a good coach, and the sooner the Jets front office realizes that, the better game.
I think Adam Gase has realized that. If you ever look at his face while coaching an NFL game, it is the face of, I truly don't belong here. Who let this happen? And the answer routinely is, for some reason, the New York Jets front office. He doesn't know what he's doing, and you have a great quarterback who's being squandered by this dude who's winging it on the job.
It's not a good look when your job is being questioned after the first week. And I'll tell you this, Christopher Johnson, Woody Johnson's brother, Christopher Johnson's the temporary owner of the Jets right now. He came out and said, we have the utmost confidence in Sam Darnold. The kid's electric. He's going to be a great quarterback. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon. I don't think he said anything about Adam Gase.
And he shouldn't. The team is where it is right now because of basically what Darnold's been able to teach himself.
This wasn't a Bills game until Josh Allen had that crazy-looking fumble. Mm-hmm. He is good for like 3 or 4 of those a year. They're phenomenal.
That's kind of how he plays. I mean, he just plays 100 miles an hour, and sometimes it's amazing when he's whipping bombs down the field. Other times, not so much.
He plays football like Marcus Smart plays basketball.
Just about, yeah. Balls to the wall.
A lot of Celtics references today, guys. Keep up. Next game was the New England Patriots 21, the Miami Dolphins 11. Brandon, this was the Cam Newton is officially more liked in Boston than Tom Brady game.
I mean, Bill Belichick has praised Cam Newton more than he ever did Tom Brady. Should he be more liked than Tom Brady? No. I mean, he brought them decades of success that any sports fan would sell their firstborn child for. So I hope he's not more liked at this point.
Boston's a what have you done for me lately town. Tom Brady recently left the town. Arrived Cam Newton did. Right now, Cam Newton is greater than Tom Brady, according to every single Patriots fan aged like 13 to 40.
That is really a shame. They were already pretty low on my favorite fan bases, but They're really fighting with the Cowboys right now at the bottom, if that's true.
All right, we're going to move on to a shellacking. The Ravens beat the Browns 38-6. I call this the when will people realize Baker Mayfield is not the guy to take the Browns to the promised land game?
So for some of our viewers at home who have the parental controls on their TV and you can't watch triple X rated films, I mean, Baltimore fucked them royally. So if you didn't see that, that is what happened. Um, Cleveland's gonna Cleveland. They had 1 year where you thought they might not, but I mean Baker Mayfield, like he's not the guy. OBJ has some other concerns at the moment he might be working through. We don't know. And just the offense just seems discombobulated. So, I mean, I see no reason to watch Cleveland after that game.
That was one of the best setups I've ever heard. That whole parental control, fuck them royally bit. That was awesome. We're going to move on to a game that was a little bit closer and kind of an upset. The Jaguars beat the Colts 27-20. I call this the ongoing legend of Gardner Minshew lives on game.
Everybody can have your Tom Brady's, your Pat Mahomes,
Your Carson Wentz's.
The Carson Wentz's, but the sexiest quarterback in the NFL is one Gardner Minshew with the mullet and the jorts. I mean, the power that man exudes. I'm surprised he doesn't have games like this all the time, and that's because his talent doesn't match up with his swag off the field. But when the two come together, when they collide, you see games like this from Gardner Minshew.
I hope they make a movie about Gardner Minshew's career because he is a movie character. He would be so funny on the big screen. Imagine who would play him.
No, the next Joe Dirt. Gardner Minshew's Joe Dirt.
I mean, I guess. Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. All right, Brandon, this is painful for me to talk about with you because I know this affects you directly. We got to talk about the Washington football game, Washington football team, Eagles game. The football team beat the Eagles 27-17. This was the you blew a 17-point lead to a team with no actual name game, which I saw you tweeted on your own personal Twitter earlier in the week.
Yes, that was a moment of extreme sadness for all of Philadelphia. And to the point where Philadelphia news crews were actually posting pictures of the game as safe spaces for our deranged fans to just go at each other and at the team in general. Nothing about the first half of this game was fantastic. The entire second half of the game is the worst I've seen this Eagles team play since Carson Wentz joined the fold. I would even go back to the Kevin Cobb era is the last time I saw this offense look that poor. The defense had a rough second half, don't get me wrong, but they had such a great first half, I'm almost going to let it go. What the offense did in that second half is mind-boggling. I mean, Doug Peterson played that game like I played Madden in the fourth quarter and I'm up 21 points. He was just sending piss missiles down the field and hoping that either Rager or Jackson was down there.
I'm going to try to describe a SpongeBob meme to you because I think it applies. There's a meme where Plankton says, "Let him have it." And SpongeBob goes, "Here you go." And he gives a stranger the ice cream cone. And the guy's like, "Thanks." So SpongeBob is the Eagles. The ice cream cone is the W. And the stranger was the Washington football team. That applies here, right?
Oh, exactly. Because Plankton, when yelling, "Let him have it," was like all Philadelphia saying, "Keep the pedal down, blow him out," not hand them the game.
All right, man, let's move on. Chicago, Detroit. Chicago stormed back to beat the Lions 27-23. This was the Mitch Trubisky saved his job game for me, Brandon. Trubisky is on the hot seat as much as a quarterback can be on the hot seat. Your boy, Nick Foles, is lurking. I mean, he's healthy, right?
Oh, yeah. All three legs are healthy.
All three legs. So the second that Trubisky slips up, loses them a game, you know Foles is going to come in, reel off 4 or 5 straight wins, put Chicago in a place where they can maybe win the division or a wild card. But they won. I mean, he did his job. He looked okay enough. I know Bears fans don't think that Trubisky is the guy in the future, but he's the guy right now. So good for them to get that win. The Lions continue to just lose games in ridiculous ways. The rookie, DeAndre Swift dropped the touchdown to win the game. And you just feel for Matt Stafford, who is a good quarterback in this league, but he can't seem to win with his team.
Can somebody go give him a hug, please? I mean, of all these guys that moved in the offseason to make win-now moves, Matt Stafford deserves better than where he is, man. He's such a good NFL quarterback. And with relation to Mitch Trubisky, I know the easy take, especially in the sports industry, is to trash Mitch Trubisky because he does make it easy. He does miss open guys once in a while. I still think, and I will die on this hill, that Mitch Trubisky has it in him to be a functional, borderline good NBA starter. And as much as I love Nick Foles, I think they got to let Mitch screw up a little bit this year. Now, if there is, on the fringe of the playoffs and Nick's sitting back there, let him do what he does best. Give Nick a playoff situation. He'll win 7 games in a row and take you to the promised land. This is what he does. But I don't think he should jump him this early.
Let's stay in the NFC North. Green Bay took down the Vikings 43-34. This was the remember how good Aaron Rodgers' game. I mean, if you watched Rodgers last year, he was not the elite Aaron Rodgers you see every year. He had a down year. I mean, their defense was incredible last year. Their run game was great, but he wasn't himself last year. Not a lot of touchdowns, just a down year for him. He comes back. Was it 3 touchdowns in the opener or 4?
I want to say it was 3.
3. They put up 43 points. I mean, is he all the way back right now?
This game could equally be called remember how good Aaron Rodgers is game or the my head coach remembered how good I am game. They had a great season last year, but it was because LaFleur kind of handcuffed him a little bit. And then we on the run game. This was kind of a vintage Aaron, just give me the damn ball. I'm a bad man, as Stephen A. Smith would say. Let me go win a game. And, I mean, he did. Like, that was as dominant we've seen him in a while.
Kirk Cousins is trash or booty?
As an Eagles fan, he is both.
There you go. We move on. Seattle beat Atlanta 38-25. This was the Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, DK Metcalf game.
Put some damn respect eventually on Russell Wilson's name. I saw a tweet today that he has never once received an MVP vote. Blasphemous. What this man has done continuously year in and year out with, until the last 2 years, not a great receiving core, for being honest here, is remarkable. He deserves 1 MVP, at least more than 1 MVP vote. Come on, guys.
Whispers, I have Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, and Chris Carson in fantasy football on the same team.
That's a bold choice that not many would make, but good for it.
All right, we move on to the Las Vegas Raiders against the Carolina Panthers. The Raiders won this game 34-30. This was the who cares who won, but the overhit. So that's cool game.
This is also the we all found out what the Panthers mascot's name was game, because I didn't care about this game, but Kenny Anderson was asking, yo, what is that cat doing over there? And they're
Kenny
like, nah,
Anderson,
man.
you're thinking of Robbie Anderson.
Robbie Anderson, yes. And a teammate was like, nah, man, that's Sir Purr. Put some respect on that man's name. Sir Purr. So that also happened in that game, which I didn't watch.
A little bit of a preview for later in the episode. Kenny Anderson will be mentioned.
He may circle back around, or Robbie.
Los Angeles, I almost said the Los Angeles Clippers. Los Angeles Chargers beat the Bengals in Joe Burrow's debut 16-13. This was the welcome to the Cincinnati Bengals Joe Burrow game.
The sincere pain on his face. That is, I mean, this was Joe Burrow realizing that he's not in Louisiana anymore. He's not on the winning team anymore. And it pains him. You can literally see the pain in his eyes that, like, he is doing everything he can to win, and the Bengals are just going to Bengal. And the weird thing about it is, I think he realized that that's a thing. The Bengals lost that way, and they're like, well, we're the Bengals. And Joe is not used to that.
The kicker for the Bengals, it's R. Bullock. What is it, Randy Bullock or Reggie? No, Reggie Bullock's the NBA player. Is it Randy Bullock?
He can be Randy forever. He's the kicker on the Bengals. He can be Randy. He can be Reginald. I mean, like, I'm up for whatever you want to call him.
He missed the game-tying field goal in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. That's the look of disgust on Joe Burrow's face. We move on to the Arizona Cardinals beating the San Francisco 49ers 24-20. This was the Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray tandem ain't fucking around game.
This team is going to be scary on offense for sure. The defense played a lot better than I expected, though, holding San Francisco to 20 points. But for the purpose of the argument, Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, and we got to add D-Hop in there. I mean, they have so many weapons. And I'm not getting up on Larry Fitzgerald either. Put Fitz in there, too. That offense has so many weapons all over the field.
And Brandon, this is crazy, but DeAndre Hopkins actually played like the best receiver in football. So whatever the Texans knew and they decided to trade him, probably not the best move on their part because he looks like he is going to do for Kyler Murray what he's done for Deshaun Watson in the past.
And from my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, David Johnson was in fact not the best running back in the NFL week 1, correct?
He was not. He was not the best running back in the NFL week 1.
Somebody done fucked up.
We move on to one of the most hyped up games of the week that ended up just being a really boring game. The New Orleans Saints beat Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers 34-23. This was the don't buy into the Brady hype just yet game. He'll probably dominate whoever he plays Seattle in week 2. Yeah, I think Tampa Bay will win that game. I think Brady's going to take Tampa Bay to a 13-3 record or 12-4, whatever the case may be. This is that overreaction. Brady did not perform great for 1 week, so let's destroy him. So he actually gets motivated and takes over the NFL game.
The thing about it is he's always been slow, but Brady looked extra slow. Not on his feet necessarily, but his reads were slower, balls were behind guys. I don't think this is going to be as easy as he tends to think it's going to be. And Seattle's not going to be an easy bounce back for him. I mean, I don't think it's unrealistic to say we're in a world where Brady starts the season 0-2.
Yeah, I wrote the tagline, the don't buy into the Brady hype game. I don't personally believe it. I am all bought in. I think that they're going to be great. This is where well, hold on. If I recall, before the season, you thought they were going to be excellent this year.
Oh, I did. I didn't think they could miss. I did not account on Brady continuing to age. I thought he had plateaued in his aging.
All right. Well, I think I flip-flop because I think I was not on their bandwagon. But I think when everyone gets off his bandwagon and everyone in the media and the fans, they talk shit, I think that's when I want to bet on Brady because that's when he's his most pissed off.
To be fair, me being on the bandwagon, you being off, I think was a win differential of 2.
Yeah. All right, the Rams played the Dallas Cowboys in Sunday Night Football, and they won 20-17. This was the Mike McCarthy made one of the stupidest in-game coaching decisions I have yet to see a coach make in the NFL to lose the game.
And I'm a big believer in all team sports that the players win and lose the games on the field. The coaches have a big impact. Mike McCarthy lost this football game. Almost single-handedly, in my opinion. That was inexplicable. Unless you want to take a shot at it, I can't wrap my head around that decision at all.
No, I mean, it's a dumb decision. You are down 3 points. Your offense has not been stellar all night. You have the ball within field goal range. You trust your kicker. It's Greg Zerloin. The guy's accurate. It was 3rd and 6. And everyone had a problem because they ran the ball to Zeke for 3 yards. So it ended up being 4th and 3. Who cares? I mean, run your 3rd down play. If you don't get it, kick a field goal. 4th and 3, McCarthy thinks, oh, wait a minute. I'm down 3, but I could be up 6. So he decides to go for it. Cowboys don't get the 4th down. CeeDee Lamb runs a route. He's short of the 1st. And guess what? They didn't score the rest of the game. So, yeah, I don't understand the logic in trying to get 6 when you only need 3. If you tie the game up there, you put the pressure back on the Rams to have to score another point. After that, the Rams defense was hyped, the Rams offense was hyped, and the game was over.
And if that is your end game, if you know going in, which presumably he did, that he wanted 6, you don't call a conservative 3rd down play. You put yourself in position for a 4th and extremely short. As good as Zeke is, you don't run him up the gut against, Aaron Donald? Both of those play calls don't make sense in tandem.
I know that's what the analytics say, Brandon, but fuck the analytics. Don't always go for it on 4th down. Be an NFL head coach with a mind that says, I'm down 3, maybe 3 points is safer than 6 points. We move on to the first Monday game, the Monday night game. It was Pittsburgh against the Giants. I don't have the score in front of me. For some reason, I didn't write it. I think Pittsburgh won 27-26-16.
Sounds about right. Regardless, though, I mean, the Big Ben still got a game applies. I've rarely seen an NFL player outside of a win or, like a championship win as excited as Juju Smith-Schuster to have someone competent throwing him the ball again. And Big Ben is still competent. He's a good quarterback, I still think, at this point in time. And he proved a lot of people wrong, myself included. I mean, I routinely make fun of Big Ben for just not being in remotely close to NFL shape. I mean, he is the Jay Cutler of his time as far as coming to training camp, having just eaten a rotisserie chicken. But he looks pretty damn good.
You know I'm a Giants fan, Brandon. I actually put a little bit of money on the Giants because I did bet that Roethlisberger would be rusty and he wouldn't look good. And by the way, they won the game 26-16. What I didn't account for was the fact that the Giants' offensive line that they've been reconstructing for the last 8 years would not perform as well as I guess fans sort of expected after you've had such a bad line the last 5 years. No, they had Daniel Jones get hit on almost every single play. And look, you were happy with what you saw from Jones in the sense that he looked confident throwing the ball. He did not have a lost fumble in this game, I believe, but 2 interceptions looked really bad. He was on the ground a lot. I don't think that Jones is the most aware quarterback of all time. Like, he doesn't really sense when the rush is coming or when and that frustrates the hell out of me as a Giants fan because I have to see him take so many hits during the game. They got to figure out they got to figure it out with their line, the Giants do. And Saquon, oh my goodness, you want to talk about a disappointing game. He was behind the line of scrimmage for 80% of the game, Brandon. The only damage he did was in the passing game. Most of his runs were for losses. Just an all around rough game for the G-men, but give the Steelers credit. Big Ben looked great. He still got it. This offense looks pretty good with him behind the helm, and this defense, bro, that Steelers defense with TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, they are going to be a problem in the NFL.
So moving on to Den and 10, Denver and Tennessee. The Stephen Gostkowski roller coaster ride game. Or we could apply the same title we did to Tom Brady, wow, this might not be that easy away from New England.
And the final score was the Titans 16, the Denver Broncos 14. The Titans won the game by 2.
Which is why it's called what it's called.
Yeah. What a Monday Night Football game. Not a lot of scores. I mean, I think the score was 7-7 at halftime, or both teams had definitely scored a touchdown, but after that it was very slow moving. Drew Lock didn't look bad. I mean, both offenses looked okay, right? Corey Davis had a nice game for Tennessee. Tannehill didn't play bad. Derrick Henry was actually shut down for most of the night. Melvin Gordon came in there. He had a fumble. Otherwise, he looked pretty good for Denver. Jerry Jeudy is probably going to become the best route runner in the NFL. He looks smooth as hell. A few drops for him. But yeah, I mean, the craziest part about this game was Stephen Gostkowski, who is known as one of the most reliable kickers in the history of football. I mean, he before that game, he was a sure Hall of Famer. He probably still is. He was 0 for 4. Well, he was 0 for 3 from field goals and 1 missed extra point leading up to the final possession for the Titans. They get the ball. They were down 14-13. They take it all the way down the field. And what do you know? Gostkowski redeems himself for the game winner. Up to that point, Brandon, he was probably public enemy number 1 in Tennessee. And that changed with a game-winning kick.
And that's the life of a kicker. I mean, kickers and closers. We were talking, what have you done for me lately, businesses early. And that's one of them. I mean, everything you miss during the game matters. But if you redeem yourself at the end and win the game, all is forgiven.
It's going to be interesting to see what the Titans do if they sign another kicker or not. Or did he redeem himself with that one kick? By the way, it was like a 30, 25-yard field goal.
It was a chipper, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Brandon, let's give our Drew Lock of the week for week 2. Unfortunately, I totally forgot about it for week 1, so I gave mine on the Last Resort Twitter. It was the Eagles, and it was wrong. So my Drew Lock of the week this week is the LA Rams -1 against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a bet I can make for my own moral standards, but I mean, it makes all the sense in the world.
Thank you.
My Drew Lock of the week, we're hammering the under on the Carolina-Tampa Bay game. Over-under set at 47.5. These are two offenses very much still finding themselves, so we're hammering the under on that game.
All right, there you go. That brings us to our interview with Celtics writer for The Athletic, Jared Weiss. Here it is. All right, we welcome on a very special and relevant guest onto the podcast today, Celtics staff writer for The Athletic, Jared Weiss. You can follow Jared on Twitter at Jared Weiss NBA. Jared, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm great. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah,
Excited.
well, this first question is going to be a fun one for you specifically. And I'm a Philly guy, so I beg Spence, let me get this one in here. Our team started off on a similar trajectory, led by young guys, new head coaches, young coach in your sense. And then there was kind of a split where the Celtics kept ascending and the Sixers could never quite get past the Celtics. I want to know why you think that is or what caused that difference in ascension.
It's a great question because like they both have two elite young talents. And frankly, up until very recently, the better ones were both in Philadelphia. But we're seeing in the playoffs here, the Celtics talent, Jalen and Jason, is more valuable because they mesh better together. Like they can build a system around those guys that works better. And like that Philly series was so embarrassing. Like I mean, Joel had a very good series. He did not have a great series. They doubled him the whole time, and it revealed that while he's better at passing out of double teams, he has a lot further to go. Like, look at the way that Nikola Jokic gets out of a double team compared to the way Joel does it. And it's not just because Jokic has the greatest passing vision we've ever seen, but Jokic can do these tight little dribbles. He can kind of like keep the ball alive as opposed to having to pivot and then jump and fling something overhead. There is a long way that Joel has to go that's even beyond the conditioning so that his defense can actually survive playing a full game, all that kind of stuff. And then just the fit with Simmons is just completely off. And I don't, even if they get Mike D'Antoni or whoever it is to come in this year, it's like, I don't really know how you can do anything about that bad fit as long as Ben Simmons is incapable of taking a shot outside of 8 feet. And so at the end of the day, while like those two guys are better than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown from like an extreme athletic finishing capability, like those other two guys are more well-rounded. They're conditioned. They're there to dominate at the end of the games. And we're seeing in these series here how like Jaylen Brown, his defense was winning the games for them against Toronto. Jason Tatum is taking all these great shots. Like he literally, Bam Adebayo had to reach inside the rim to reject what would have been a game-tying dunk for Tatum at the end of overtime. And even at the end of these games where Tatum is going like 1 for 7 from the field and taking bad shots, he still is playing incredible defense and grabbing every single rebound in sight. Like he is always making an impact, while Joel and Ben can be game planned out of these games. And I think at the end of the day, those are the two biggest factors. And then you start looking around the roster, and it's just like the Tobias Harris contract is going to kill this team because he showed in the playoffs that he doesn't have dribble creation skills good enough to be a lead scorer in a playoff series against a good defense. I mean, the Celtics are probably the best defense in the NBA at this point, but all the defenses are going to be good when you get to the playoffs. And Tobias is clearly, Tobias is basically in his prime at this point. Like he might get a little bit better, but he's not going to get that much better. And then you just look at all the draft picks, like the fact that there's nobody left over from the start of the process, while like Boston's had a crazy amount of turnover, but they have Marcus Smart. And Marcus Smart is a huge part of their core identity. They drafted Marcus Smart back in, I want to say 2014, I think. When wasn't Noel that year, or was Noel maybe the year before or after? I can't remember.
Noel was the very beginning of the process, so I think that was.
Smart was drafted in 2014. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so maybe I have the timeline wrong, just because I'm pretty sure Noel and Smart were both the 6th pick in the draft, right? So
yeah,
maybe I'm misremembering something.
Maybe
It was Noel was 2013 because
Correct.
In 2012. The Celtic, that was the first playoff series I ever covered, was that last series with Evan Turner and Drew Holiday and all those guys. Then they traded Drew. So, you look back at none of those draft picks panned out. They had so many bites at the apple, and they failed on the first like 4 bites basically. Yeah. And they very rarely drafted guys later in the draft that were valuable. I mean, like they had Covington and they had Saric, and they traded all that depth away for Jimmy, who then left, and I guess they turned him into Richardson, so it kind of continues on. But like my Philadelphia did not do a good job of filling in the gaps around their stars, and Boston has done a really good job of creating a top-heavy depth of star power, and that's why they keep going in the playoffs. And we've seen the other differentiator besides the front office moves, and I'm sorry this is taking like an hour to answer this, but it is a question that requires like an hour to answer, is that Brad Stevens has taken three completely different teams to the Eastern Conference Finals in the last 4 years, which is it's just crazy that they've even made it, a non-LeBron team making it that many times. But they're all completely different teams led by different players. And the Sixers over and over and over have been trying to do it with the same exact core, and they haven't been able to do it. And so, at the end of the day, if Kawhi didn't have that shot bounce in and they go to overtime, and then Jimmy goes ape shit and they win in overtime, everything's different. Philly probably would have won that title, right? I mean, I think they would have beaten Milwaukee last year. If Golden State got hurt, they would have been able to take advantage. So Philly could be the defending champs right now, and Joel Embiid's the MVP and Brett Brown's the best coach. It's amazing how that Kawhi shot changed the entire course of NBA history. But the fact that Philly just fell off so hard after that moment, I think shows just a difference in the institutional setup between these two teams. And the Celtics have had continuity and great leadership from the ownership, GM, coach this whole time. They've had two coaches since I was 13 or 14, I think. Like, it's kind of crazy. 13, yeah. It's been Doc Rivers and Brad Stevens for basically 2 decades now, with Danny Ainge the whole time in the same ownership group. And they have very little turnover because they're pretty damn good at what they do.
We're just going to save this part of the recording and just mail it to the Sixers front office, if that's okay with you.
The first Celtics series that you covered was the KG series from Uncut Gems, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
when he covered all those bets.
Yeah, that's right. I could have made a ton off of that. If only I had the magic opal.
The magic
could have made
opal.
a cameo.
All right, Jared, let's get into this Celtics series. Game 1 against the Heat on Tuesday night was disappointing, to say the least. You guys seemed to be in control for 80% of the game, but you squandered, was it a 14-point lead in the fourth?
Sounds about right, yeah.
And eventually you lost the game in overtime. Tell Brandon and I and the audience what went wrong for the Celtics in that first game against the Heat.
I mean, not much. Like, it was a pretty damn good game. I came away from that game. I mean, I'm a reporter, so like obviously I don't really care if they win or not. But I came away from that game being hyped as hell, thinking like, wow, this series is going to be amazing. I was worried because that last series was so unbelievably awesome. I was worried that this was going to be kind of a cakewalk series for one of the two teams, and hopefully we go to overtime every single night. And Boston has this issue that I've been really critical of for the past like week and a half, and Stevens even said it today, that they get super stagnant at the end of these games and they keep devolving into isolation play. And I thought what was interesting was we saw the difference in isolation play on the last possession of regulation, and then what ended up being the second to last possession, where the bam block happened in overtime, where in that regulation possession, Kemba and JT, they get the switch, and then it's just fed to Tatum, who actually technically traveled when he spun out of the catch, which it was in the LCM report today. And then Tatum just kind of sized up Derek Jones and pulled up for a contested 30-footer. There wasn't much action going on there. There wasn't much creativity to it. And I tweeted at the time that was an incredibly immature shot. It was a terrible shot, and it shows how much further Jason Tatum has to go from being a body of work superstar, which he is right now, because the body of work, the box score numbers that he's putting up are like literally some of the best stuff in the history of the NBA. Is, people, for a 22-year-old, he's either setting a new NBA record or he's tying Kobe or LeBron or Jerry West or Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem, like literally the top 10 players in NBA history. So I don't know if Tatum's going to be a top 10 player in NBA history, but clearly he's going to be a very good player. But so we saw the change in that he was way too predictable in the last few possessions, frankly, of regulation. Then you get to overtime at the very end, and him and Kemba do a similar thing where Kemba crosses, gets the ball to Tatum. Actually, I think Tatum already had the ball, but Kemba runs a crossing, looping action. And instead of just drawing the switch very simply, Tatum actually sells like he's going to drive towards Kemba and they're going to do another handoff. That gets Jimmy Butler out of position, and then boom, he hits Butler with the crossover, and he leaves one of the best defenders in the NBA in the dust and gets what looked like for a second a wide open tomahawk slam at the rim. And so that kind of creative stuff, cross actions, you doing the same stuff that Miami does to their opponents, where you're constantly just looping through players, trying to screw up the defensive switches. That was what the Celtics need to do. They need to stop ball watching each other. They have a lot of great individual scores, but they're also great playmakers. And their problem is that in the crunch time, these last few games, they've been watching each other be great individual scorers, and they need to go back to being great individual playmakers.
We're wondering how does Kemba Walker get back to being that problem that he was for the first 5 games of the Raptors series, where he's kind of faded to the background a bit when Boston is really going to need to be firing on all cylinders against this Heat team?
I got no idea, bro. Honestly, he's missing some open shots. So the funny thing is, for all the struggles that he's hit that sidestep cardiac Kemba 17-footer at the end of like every single game. So it's like no matter how bad it's gotten, he's hit that vintage shot that should win the game every single time, and most of the time the opponent hits back. I don't know what's going on, because we saw there was a weird play towards the end of the game where he had just done a really nice job attacking middle and then putting up a little floater over Jay Crowder from like 5 feet out. And then he attacks Jay Crowder again on the next play. He gets past Jay Crowder, gets to the block where he should usually kind of jump forward and extend out for a finger roll. And instead, he kind of like stops there, kind of looks confused, and just takes a jump shot from like 4 feet away from the rim. And of course, when he did that, instead of going up towards the rim, Jay Crowder just came in and swatted the hell out of the ball. And so that told me that there's just Kemba is being too rushed, even more than he's used to, which is crazy because like Kemba is like the quickest, most explosive guard that we've seen in this generation. Like we haven't seen anybody with his kind of like quick pop since like Allen Iverson or Kenny Anderson or something like that. Like he is tiny pocket explosiveness, and we're not seeing that confidence and explosiveness when he gets into the paint. And then obviously when he's not hitting his pull-ups, it's not a lot he can do. I think what they need to do is, he was really at his best in the regular season when they were setting really high ball screens for him, where he had enough room to hop into that pull-up three-pointer and get that off. And they need to find ways to do that. Miami's, they're zoning or they're switching. I think the key to getting around that is pulling them out way further, showing that Kemba can pull up from 28, from 30 feet, and force them to come play him out there the way that like Dame does or the way that Jamal Murray does. And, you know, they're because like, and tell me if I'm going too far here, but like what we really saw a ton of that Miami was doing that I thought was really great was when they were trying to do some of that stuff, Miami would blitz Kemba and trap him up against half court. And Kemba was doing a pretty solid job of getting the ball out of there. But if they disguise that action better, then they can get into it without Miami being into position to blitz, and then he can get into those shots that he can step into, or Miami's too late to step up, and then as they're trying to step up, boom, he hits them with an explosion and gets into the paint, and then Miami's really in trouble. And so Boston needs to find a way to, I guess, maybe not have Kemba bring the ball down, have somebody else bring the ball down, and then flow Kemba into a handoff, and then he gets that high screen. I think that's probably how you unlock him, but I mean, that's something that Eric Spoelstra, if I can figure it out, then I'm sure Eric Spoelstra is going to figure it out, because he's 1,000, not even 1,000, a million times the NBA analyst than I am. So, I mean, Kemba, maybe at this point, you know, he's never been this far into the playoffs. Maybe at this point of the playoffs, he's just too small to be able to dominate on a consistent basis. But I don't believe that's the case. I think he's too smart. He's too hardworking. He's too explosive to be able to not be able to find a way to break through.
Love your Kenny Anderson shout out. He's my favorite Celtic of all time because he played for the Nets too. And I had him on my other Nets podcast. He's great, by the way. Loved him as a Celtic. On the flip side, you talked a little bit about Kemba. You talked a little bit about Tatum. How impressed have you been, Jared, with the play of one Marcus Smart during these playoffs?
Well, anyone that knows me knows how much I love Marcus. I mean, I've been covering Marcus his whole career. What he's done on and off the court is incredible, and he's one of my favorite players in NBA history because of his values, the way that he approaches the game, the way that he has changed defense. He's changed defense in the NBA. He's made a big impact on the way that we view defense. He's the first guard we've ever seen that's willing to guard in any single role imaginable. We've never quite seen anything like what he does. And the one thing that was missing from his game was just being able to catch and shoot consistently and being a comfortable scorer. And we're finally seeing that. And he's doing it. And I think he's doing it because of the moment. He's doing it because he feels like he has to be that guy for this team. And when we were earlier in the playoffs, I was noting in all my scouting reports about how Smart, people don't even realize this. They look at his overall 3-point shooting numbers and they see like 36 or whatever it is, and they're thinking, all right, so now he's an average 3-point shooter. But that's not quite the case. As a pull-up shooter, he shot, I think, like 41.5% this year, tied with JJ Redick for, I believe, 4th place in the NBA. So he's as good of a shooter on pull-ups as JJ frickin' Redick. But as catch and shoot, he was like dead last. So what's been so crazy about this playoffs is that we saw Toronto out the gate did exactly what I said they were going to do in my scouting report, which is that they're going to force Marcus Smart into the corners by putting up high ball pressure and force him to take wide open corner 3-pointers. And that gamble failed miserably. He was red hot on the catch and shoots from the corners. And so they tried forcing him to catch and shoot up at the elbows or at the top of the arc and take those shots away. And he keeps hitting them. And all of a sudden, he's become like a deadly catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He's just like a straight up good shooter. And I don't know if this is going to carry on for the rest of his career. If it does, he's an all-star, clearly. He needs to cut down on some turnovers a little bit, but he's gotten better as a finisher. He can now draw fouls when he attacks the lane. He's good at grifting for those fouls now. And he still makes too many reckless plays on offense because he only knows how to play one way, and that's balls to the wall. And so that's stuff he needs to clean up, but it's just incredible. It's such an amazing story of how Gordon Hayward went down, and that should have been it for the Celtics. And then Marcus Smart stepped into his role and is doing all the stuff that Gordon does well on top of what Marcus does well. It's incredible to watch. And you can hate him all you want because you get annoyed that he flops against your team. But once the vitriol calms down and the adrenaline goes down, recognized how incredible what he's doing is and how he just continues to evolve over and over and over again.
Yeah, and as far as the flopping goes, I mean, he'll always be behind Kyle Lowry in that sense. So no one's ever going to focus their entire rage on just Smart. That can be spread around. But we're going to look a little bit forward to Game 2, which when this airs will be later today. And what are some of the adjustments you think Brad Stevens needs to make in order to close that ever so small gap between these teams?
So I think the thing that really killed them was transition defense. They were incredible in transit. They won transition against Toronto, who was supposed to be the best transition team in the NBA, and that was a huge reason why they won that series. And so I think the big thing that they need to do is clean up their transition defense. A lot of that is because they're missing shots. Like a lot of the reason why they're giving up those opportunities is because they missed so many shots that there were just so many chances for Miami to get out and run. But guys like Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Smart, they need to be more disciplined getting back because, frankly, a lot of the time it was just Kemba Walker getting back there. Kemba Walker's he works really hard on defense, but he's not capable of getting these stops. He's too small. So they have to get a lot better at that. They need to figure out how to counter Miami's offensive counter. So Boston's defense was doing a nice job of really flattening out Miami's offense. So Miami's offense is all about you get the ball down low, then you kick it back out, then you crisscross, and it's all about getting zigzagging ball movement and getting guys running in different directions away from the ball. And it's like this it's like watching remember the pipe screensaver on Windows 95 back in the day? Yeah, it's like, at first you could see where the pipe was going, then eventually it would get too convoluted, you couldn't keep track. That's what it's like, basically. I mean, it's literally Steve Kerr's system from the Warriors with Steph Curry. It's the same system. And so obviously that's one of the best systems ever made. And so Boston was really good at basically kind of flattening out those curls and kind of keeping them along those elbows, not letting them get too deep into the baseline, not letting them get too high towards the top of the arc. That was working really well, but they were also giving up a lot of backdoor cuts to the rim. Jaylen Brown blowing it, covering Jimmy Butler off ball, Bam Adebayo finding him with bounce passes. Bam Adebayo had I think 9 assists in that game, and he didn't even really start until the second quarter. So Bam could end up with triple doubles the rest of the series if the Celtics aren't careful. And so when the Celtics tried to commit to taking away those back cuts, that's what exposed Miami up top. And then Miami started getting, Tyler Hero threes at the top of the arc, stuff like that. Jay Crowder, I think, had a few shots up there too. And then obviously Goran Dragic just destroyed them in transition in the half court the entire game. And so besides one, getting somebody on Dragic that can actually make him not a 30-point scorer, that'll probably be enough for them to win. But two, they need to find a way to be able to, I guess, not have to load up with 2 or 3 defenders down low so that they can still stay home on those shooters up top, because that's how you really get killed by Miami.
All right, Brad Stevens, I hope you're listening. Speaking of Brad Stevens, he received a contract extension before the playoffs started. I have some friends in Boston, Jared. They've been sort of critical of this extension. They thought it was a little premature. Obviously, they're not crazy about Stevenson's late game decision making during these playoffs. Did you feel this move was warranted to give Stevens the extension?
I think if OG Anunoby never hit that shot at the end of game 3, nobody would be saying any of that stuff. The Celtics were almost up 3-0. Kemba Walker hit the game winner with half a second left in game 3. And then it took Kyle Lowry throwing a, Tom Brady's a bad example, who threw a really good deep ball. Go with
you can say Tom Brady. Go with Roethlisberger.
There we go. I like that. A Big Ben, Big Ben deep ball. That makes sense because they're both super chubby, right? So, Kyle Lowry with a chubby Big Ben deep ball over the tallest player in the history of the NBA on the dot. It took the miracle list of miracles to beat them in game 3. It took the miracle list of miracles to beat them in game 1 the other night. I mean, look at the plays that the Celtics have lost on in these playoffs. These are some of the greatest plays we've ever seen. It's insane. The Celtics are really damn good, and they're ahead of schedule. Before the season, their owner, Wick Grousbeck, said, we're looking at this as a bridge year to competing for the title next year. They're already a legit favorite for the title right now. They're even with these other teams. They have a great shot at winning the title right now. And it's not because of the bubble. The bubble's been terrible to them. They lost Gordon Hayward. They lost one of their stars. They're doing it because they're a great coach team. And every single one of these series, all the players, the opponents, opposing coaches, they'll come away going holy crap, Brad Stevens is amazing. At a certain point, you got to recognize if everyone keeps talking about how amazing your opposing coach is, he's probably pretty good. So as far as premature, they've extended Brad Stevens. They extend him every 3 years. They give him a 6-year deal. When it gets halfway through, they tend to give him an extension. I think it actually got down to 2 years before this extension this time around. So it was actually... It not only was it not premature, it was later than they gave the extensions in the past. But it was a no-brainer. If you're ever going to fire a coach because you wanted to upgrade, this is the year to do it because you got so many great coaches all of a sudden hitting the market. It's crazy that Mike D'Antoni is somehow available as a coach after what he's done. But that's Tillman Fertitta's fault. But I don't think there's a single coach in the league they would rather have, because they know that Stevens is great. They know that he's all about growing and developing, and he's young. For all the criticisms of him not being a good coach in late game situations, the dude's 44 at this point. He's a really young coach. He's early in his career. That's stuff about that's the stuff that comes down to experience, and he's early in that stage of his career. So he's still getting better and better.
Yeah, no, I'm not someone who disagreed with the extension. I think Stevens is one of the best coaches in the league. For me, I found it crazy that my friends were even talking to me about that stuff. I think they just thought for them it was premature. I'm not a Celtics fan, but me personally, I would take Brad Stevens in a heartbeat over any of the last 10 coaches of the New Jersey Nets / Brooklyn Nets. All right, Jared, we are going to end this interview with our rapid fire. We're going to ask you 10 quick questions. Give us the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Let's do it.
Number 1, favorite Celtics player of all time.
2012 playoffs, Rajon Rondo.
More important player on the 2009 championship team or 8 championship team?
2008.
Paul Pierce or Kevin Garnett?
Kevin Garnett.
Better personality in sports media, Paul Pierce or Kendrick Perkins?
Neither.
Name me a Celtic, current or former, who doesn't nearly get the respect he deserves.
Wow, that's hard. Frank Ramsey.
There you go. I did not know that name. He should get more respect. Name a player you wish the Celtics never let leave the organization.
Uh, mm, why? Etwan Moore.
Worst moment in Celtics history.
The magic hook shot in '87. That's got to be it, right?
Best interview with a Celtics player you ever orchestrated.
Ooh, that's a good one. Every time I've ever talked to Evan Turner.
How thankful are Celtics fans for Billy King and the Brooklyn Nets making that trade a decade ago?
They would throw Billy a parade if he ever showed up in Beantown, I'm sure.
If Doc Rivers never wins a championship again, is his legacy as an all-time great coach tarnished?
No, of course not.
You're directing a 2021 Celtic Pride remake. Are you familiar with the original?
Yeah, of course. Come on.
All right. Who are you picking to play the star player? Who are the two actors that you're playing to play the crazy fans?
Okay, well, Damon Wayans Jr., obviously,
Okay.
for the player, who's already one of my favorite actors, but obviously has to do the role. I would do Damon Wayans in a mask as one of the crazy fans, legitimately. And then I would do no. Okay, it would be Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill. That's who it would be.
Oh, I love that. I would
Yeah.
watch that movie in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Jared. Thank you so much for joining the podcast this week, man. Again, you can find Jared on Twitter at Jared Weiss NBA. That's at Jared Weiss NBA. Thank you for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Those were good rapid fire questions. Kudos to you guys.
I told you I went to school in UMass. I know
That's
Celtics
right.
basketball like the back of my hand.
Yeah, I went hands off on this one. This was Spencer's show. I mean, these are his guys, his city. I let him run wild on that one.
I'm trying to think if there was a better answer for who they let go that I should have gone with. Etwan Moore is just like the first person I could think of. Dwight Powell, that was a bad one. They let go of a lot of good second rounders in like the late, or like I guess like in the early Stevens days, that they just totally blew it on. Dwight Powell, I think, was part of the Rondo trade that got them Jay Crowder and the pick that they turned into something good. I can't remember, but so like it was a good trade. But Dwight Powell, I always thought he was going to be really good, and he's turned into a very good player.
Listen, if Jared Weiss had his way, Dwight Powell and Etwan Moore would still be on the Celtics.
Can you think of a good one who's like a really good player that they let go of? Like Tony Allen, I think they had to let go of, and I think they had Avery Bradley ready to. I think they drafted Avery Bradley or something like that.
I mean, look at what Jay Crowder gives Miami on a nightly basis. If they were able to keep him, he's such a solid player, Jay Crowder.
Yeah, I mean, Jay Crowder is great right now, but he's been struggling for like 3 years in a row now, ever since they traded him. So I think, and not to mention, they needed him to leave so they could make room for Jalen to step into his role. So I don't really think they're missing Jay that much. That's weird. I can't think of anyone.
Well, we're talking about former Celtics.
Aaron Baines, that's a good one.
Yeah,
who's a better center, Daniel Tice or Aaron Baines? It's the debate I've been having lately. It's tough.
I mean, Daniel Tice has been better this season, so I guess I would go with him. And he's a better playmaker on offense. Like his passing is very valuable, and his perimeter defense is pretty. Yeah, I think I would go with Tice. I think Tice this year has been better because I thought Baines was horribly underrated last year. Like he was one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, but people only know him for getting posterized. But it's like, yeah, because he goes up and he defends every single shot, and he had like I think it was like ahead of Rudy Gobert as the second best defender at the rim in the NBA last year. So, you know, the Celtics centers have always been underrated, but now that they're so successful this year, I think people are starting to notice how good Tice is.
I like Tice because he fits that classic role-playing center mold, right? The Greg Stiesma, the Aaron Baines, the Kendrick Perkins, the Daniel Tice, that tough, rugged, hard-nosed center who's going to take the bangs. He's not going to be the best offensive guy in the world, but defensively, he's going to give you everything you can ask for in a center.
From a role perspective, he reminds me more of Brandon Bass, who they had back in the early 2010s, because he was like pretty understated. Bass was like Bass, most of what he did was he was a good rebounder and a good screener for pick and pop stuff. So it was kind of the opposite role of what Tice does. And that was back in the bigger era because he was playing next to KG, obviously. But he was like a very valuable guy that kind of held everything together for them and didn't do anything too exceptional, but was good at what he did. And I feel like Tice is kind of that same guy. And it's funny because Tice used to be a really good pick and pop threat. He can't shoot for shit anymore for some reason. Like, as good as he is now, imagine if he was actually a reliable shooter. He would be so much more impactful.
I think the Celtics win that first game if Tice can hit open threes. That would be such a huge difference.
I haven't even checked how many threes he missed in that game. I'm sure he went like 1 for 5 or something like that.
Well, Jared, I know we're running overboard for the time, but listen, you can come back on the podcast anytime you want. I love talking Celtics basketball almost as much as I love talking Brooklyn Nets basketball. It's close. I prefer Brooklyn Nets basketball, but Celtics basketball is definitely 1B. So we thank you for coming on, man, and definitely you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, sure.
All right, and that is Jared Weiss. He is the Celtics writer for The Athletic. We thank Jared for coming on. That was a great interview, Brandon.
Man, you talk about basketball knowledge. I mean, I was just sitting here, jaw on the ground, just getting hit with a cannon of just basketball facts.
He knows his C's basketball, man.
Well, we'll move on from a pretty dominant interview to the most dominant athletes in the history of movies. Now, I need some clarification on this, too, from Spence. I'm just going to explain it to the readers. These don't have to be sports movies?
No, they don't. I'm just looking for the top 5 most dominant athletes in the history of movies. It could be a sports movie. It could be a random movie where someone does something athletic. That's what I'm thinking for the top 5 most dominant athletes in the history of movies. Are you ready?
All right, so what am I going to do? 5 for 5, 4 for 4, so on?
Yes, sir. You're going to start with your 5th.
All right, number 5 on my list was Jenko from 22 Jump Street. Problem in the passing game. Turned a city college or whatever the hell they were from a useless team to both of them. He and his quarterback almost getting recruited for a greater college than possibly the pros. He brought the field goal post down for the first time in team history. And, I mean, it helped he was 35. None of these college kids could tackle Jenko. I mean, he was running people over on the field.
Yeah, he was pretty good. I remember he walked out of that game, right, to help Jonah Hill, or did he win the game?
He ran out of halftime to go help Jonah Hill, came back in the little golf cart helmet, blew that up, and knocked the goalpost down.
Yeah, but while he was on the field, he was dominant.
Oh, the first half, no one could touch him. I mean, like I said, it helps he's 35 and jacked, but nevertheless.
That's a pretty good number 5. Brandon, mine's going to be Tommy Reardon or Tommy Conlon, depending on how you look at it, from the movie Warrior. So played by Tom Hardy, Tommy Reardon dominates every fighter in a best of 16 UFC tournament. He beats Francisco Barbosa and Mad Dog Grimes, and he beats them within 30 seconds of the fight. The only fighter, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about the ending of that movie. Just know that Tommy Reardon is dominant in the movie Warrior, and he doesn't only beat guys, he beats them within 20 to 30 seconds of the fight.
That's a tough one. We went different directions with our 4. I went Ty Crane from Coach Carter. Granted, he is not the protagonist. I mean, you kind of grow to hate the guy throughout the movie. But he's basically Kobe Bryant in high school with a different name and different school. Who were almost undefeated. Coach Carter almost has his team undefeated. Couldn't figure him out. I mean, from the elbow, money. Inside, money. Defense, a couple blocks. 3-point line, money. I mean, Ty Crane couldn't be stopped. I think he was based off Kobe Bryant, but that's just my conspiracy theory.
I thought he was based off LeBron James.
Also possible.
That's a good one. Ty Crane was pretty dominant. My number 4 was a boxer who was undefeated. It's Mason the Line Dixon from the movie Rocky Balboa. I mean, he's 33-0. He's got 30 knockouts. He's just bored. And he does this exhibition match with Rocky. Sure, Rocky gives him a run for his money at age like 60, which is just amazing to watch. But Dixon still won the fight. It was an exhibition bout. Dixon still undefeated. Most dominant boxer in movie history outside of Ali from the movie about Muhammad Ali. But I figured Dixon was just kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit different. You know, everyone could pick Ali. I wanted to pick Mason the Line Dixon.
Man, not choosing Ali or Balboa, that's borderline un-American.
Balboa is not undefeated. I mean, he's lost a bunch of fights. Well, 2.
All right, so I'm going to continue with my, I guess, deeper dives. I mean, I went a little bit different. This is Megan from The Longest Yard. I'm assuming you've seen the film.
Why is that deeper?
I don't know. I mean, they're not like in your face dominant. They're like you had to watch the movie and be like, Megan was like a side guy.
I mean, there's a whole scene dedicated to him just torching everyone on defense.
That's fair. Nevertheless, I mean, again, I suspect he might have been based off of Barry Sanders.
I guess, yeah,
He could have been.
Sure, or he could have been based on any other running back in the NFL.
I know.
Why is it Barry Sanders?
I don't know. Whenever I watch him, I get some serious Barry Sanders vibes from the way he's portrayed, just running in and around dudes.
Sticking with Sandler movies, my number 3 was Davy Stone from Eight Crazy Nights.
Crazy.
You want to talk about the perfect jump shot? Stone didn't know how to miss. He led his JCC team back from way down to win the championship when he was a kid. On the same night, RIP, both his parents passed away in a tragic car accident. And then 25, 30 years later, he's an out-of-shape alcoholic bum, and he just dominates 2 grown men at open gym playing with a 12-year-old on 2-on-2. He did not miss. He got that kid to dunk. Davy Stone is my number 3.
Eight Crazy Nights, Adam Sandler film, correct?
Yeah, he voices 3 of the characters, or 4, 3.
In every movie that he's in or around, he has to be really good at sports in some way.
Pretty much, yeah. Grown Ups, Eight Crazy Nights, Longest Yard, Happy Gilmore, The Water Boy. I'm sure there's in Mr. Deeds, he owns the Jets.
Yeah. So speaking of Happy Gilmore, that's my number 2. Golf-wise, I mean, it's hard to get hype watching golf, but hey, watching Happy Gilmore send the ball 400-something yards with a hockey stick, freaking awesome. And then that last putt off of the Beetle, the tower, down a couple pipes, in to seal it. I mean, ice in the guy's veins. And he stood in front of like a pitching machine and just started taking fastballs for the fun of it. Like, that's so alpha.
That is really alpha. Yeah. Also, Billy Madison, he plays kickball and basketball. So another movie, he showcases how good he is at sports. But Happy Gilmore is an excellent choice. One of the most dominant golfers. I mean, his putting game wasn't anything to brag about, but definitely a great golfer. Out of the 3 movies I've listed, have you seen them all or no?
I have seen Eight Crazy Nights and I've seen Rocky Balboa.
Okay, so you haven't seen Warrior.
No.
All right, so put that on your list of movies to watch. Warrior is one of the greatest fighting movies I've ever seen. It actually might be my favorite fighting movie of all time. The top 2 of my choices, my movies, I don't think you've seen either of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to start with the movie Bedazzled.
I had to look this up because I was confused as to where you went with this.
All right, so basically the premise of the movie is Brendan Fraser meets the devil, played by Elizabeth Hurley. He gets 8 wishes, I think it is. And he's in love with this. He has a crush on this girl at work. So all 8 wishes tend to revolve around this girl that he wants to date. So one of the wishes is he wishes that he was a famous basketball player, Michael Jordan status. So she makes him this 7'2" goon who in his game, his name is Elliot Richards, by the way. He plays for the Diablos. Not sure what city they're out of. He posted 104 points, 45 rebounds, 32 assists, and 37 steals while doing ridiculous flipping dunks, drilling no-look three-pointers. I mean, the team was up like a buck 30 to 60 at the end of the game. Elliot Richards was dominant at basketball. He's the most dominant player I've ever seen play basketball. But you know what? He did have a tiny penis, and that is why he did not like the wish, and he ended up retracting that wish. But honestly, not speaking for anyone out there, I probably would have stayed in that life. If that's your only issue, just deal with it, bro. Like, some guys are bigger than others. Who cares? It's just size.
Couple things to that end. One, if you're that good, do they care?
No, I don't think so.
That's an average guy problem, right? If you're that good, I don't think they care.
Well, there is a scene where, I mean, no spoilers, but like she's the reporter, so she's interviewing him, and then like he accidentally like drops his towel, and she starts laughing, and he's like, "Oh, what the hell? What the hell?" And he's like staring, and then she like basically he has a cell phone that he can retract his wishes and wish again. So that's the scene where he uses it. But I agree with you, man. Do they care? Apparently she did, and that was his true love. So personally, I would have stuck with it. There's plenty of fish in the sea.
Yeah. I'm also glad with the way you expounded upon that, because I thought he was number 2 in your power rankings solely because of his small penis.
No.
And that would have been unfortunate.
No. That would have been unfortunate. But Movie Bedazzled, very interesting watch. Not a bad movie. It's actually better than it's a better movie than my number one selection, which I'll share in a second. But definitely give it a watch.
So my number one, I knew I wanted to go baseball, but I wasn't sure how. The safe pick would have been Benny the Jet. Could have gone Henry Rowan Gardner, but those are easy. I decided to make it harder. So I went Gus Bus from the Benchwarmers. Led a three-man team with two possibly, special needs adults and one person who's afraid of the sun.
Howie.
Long live Howie, by the way. That guy was awesome. Led them to the title single-handedly, playing a third of the positions, hitting 30 home runs, mind you. And just against all the odds. I mean, the dude was like, 5'6"? His wife wanted to come home and have sex all the time. He said, no, I got Little League Baseball to focus on right now. I mean, that's dedication in my book.
And look, you can make the argument that all the kids that he beat were like 12 or 13-year-olds, but there was that one game when they played Carlos, albeit his papers said he was 13. But Brandon, you and I have a hunch that he might have been older than the age of 13.
The green crayon and the 30 rack of Tecate beer makes me a bit suspicious.
He beat Carlos, albeit a drunk Carlos. And yeah, I love that number one pick. The purpose of these top fives is to not do the easy, Michael Jordan's in Space Jam, Henry Rowan Gardner and the rookie, one of the South Park guys from basketball, whatever. I love that Gus Bus pick. And I am also going to stick with baseball for my number one. And I also chose another Brandon Fraser vehicle. Steve Nebraska in the movie The Scout. So the premise is The Scout. Albert Brooks is a scout for the Yankees. He finds this kid named Steve Nebraska, this pitcher. I believe it was a city in Mexico. I don't remember the city. But he finds him, and he's just dominating, like pitching amazing, hitting amazing, whatever. He signs him to the New York Yankees. He goes, you're going to play for the Yankees. You're going to pitch in the World Series. And unfortunately, Steve Nebraska, he has these mental health issues in which he goes through anxiety. He kind of goes to the New York City, and he can't really, be comfortable and live there. And there are all these obstacles he has to overcome. And basically, the end of the movie, I don't want to give anything away, but he's contemplating on not pitching in the World Series. And the scout, Albert Brooks, convinces him to pitch. And he goes in. What does he do in game one of the World Series against the Cardinals? He pitches the most dominant, perfect game of all time. 27 strikeouts on 81 straight strikes, 9 innings. He hits 105 miles per hour per pitch. I think he got up to 110 or 111 at one point, which is humanly impossible. He even hit a home run in the first inning to give the Yanks a 1-0 lead. I mean, it was incredible. One of his pitches was so fast, it knocked the catcher back 5 feet. Steve Nebraska, just incredible to watch. The movie itself is abysmal. I mean, if you want to spend an hour and a half watching The Scout, you might hate yourself. But the ending is just so funny. Like, every pitch is just over 105 miles an hour and a strike, and he strikes out Ozzie Smith like it's nothing. It's very, very, very funny, very unrealistic, but this isn't a realistic top five. This is a who is your most dominant athlete in movies top five. It's Steve Nebraska.
So that sounds like one of those fast forward an hour and 20 minutes and then catch the good stuff.
I'm sure you can search it on YouTube and watch the final 20 minutes of the movie. Yeah.
Sounds about right to me.
All right, Brandon, that does it for this week's episode of The Last Resort. We thank Jared Weiss for coming on. He was excellent. Please tune in next week. We will probably most likely have another guest, and we're not going to share until next week.
Stay tuned. It might come out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monitor your Twitters for the Last Resort.
Could the guest be LeBron James? Probably not, but you don't know. Check us out next week.